Well, let's talk more about this indictment against Donald Trump. Lawrence R. Douglas is a law professor at Amherst College. He's equally an author. Lawrence, thanks very much for speaking to us here at France 24 this afternoon. Donald Trump, you would have heard in that report, he's putting his own spin on this indictment, notably talking about a witch hunt, I should say, being led against him, and Joe Biden being something of a dictator. It's clear what his defence in this is going to be. Donald Trump is the victim. The others keep chasing him.
Right. But again, I think we need to distinguish between the kind of defense that he tries to make to his base and basically in public opinion, and the defense that's going to fly in a federal courtroom, arguing that he's simply the victim of a witch hunt in a federal courtroom. That's not an argument that's going to fly. Now, he can try to make an argument that he's being the victim of selective prosecution. That is, other people who have engaged in similar acts were not prosecuted while he is. But there's very little evidence to suggest that. And he tries to engage in this kind of what we describe as whataboutism, saying things like, well, wasn't it demonstrated that Joe Biden had taken some classified material? But again, there was a huge difference between Joe Biden, who had a small amount of classified material. As soon as he learned that he had it, he immediately cooperated with authorities and gave that material back to Trump, who had, over 13,000 documents, some of them highly, highly classified, and engaged in a campaign of obfuscation and refusal when it came to the FBI's attempt to secure that material.
To hand them over. I want to think, Lawrence, about the political consequences of this. You touched on Donald Trump's popularity there. Is a case like this likely to help him or to hinder him? Because, of course, it's no secret that he plans to run again for president in 2024.
Well, it's not even no secret. He is a declared candidate for 2024 already. And, again, I think maybe we need to distinguish who among whom it could help him and among whom it could hurt him. We saw that even a couple months ago when he was indicted for the first time in New York for the hush money payments, we saw that indictment did help him in his raising monies for his campaign. So it does help him. I think these kind of charges does galvanize his base, and it increases the passionate support that he enjoys among his base. Whether that actually translates into a more general popularity with the electorate, that I doubt. So I think there's a difference between galvanizing his base, which I do think happens as a result of these indictments, and contributing to his overall electability, which I don't think. I think these actually do have ultimately a damage to him, as people see just the number of criminal cases that he's now being exposed to.
I mean, let's stay with those criminal case or criminal counts, you might say. We've heard a lot about the gravity, and you made reference before about, some of these dossiers that he had with, top secrets, which could potentially jeopardize US security. Is this something that he could go to prison for? Or is that highly unlikely, given who he is and given the American justice system? Where could this lead to?
Well, if you look at other people who have been prosecuted for violating what's called the Espionage Act from 1917, which is basically the willful retention of national defense information, those people have gone to prison. And each count associated with the willful retention of national defense information carries the potential penalty of 10 years imprisonment. And remember, this is a 37-count indictment. Some of the other counts, such as obstruction and conspiracy, they carry the potential of other prison terms, 5 years, 20 years in another case. Again, it's not unlikely that a conviction could result in prison. Now, again, there's a lot of sentencing. There's a lot of range with regards to sentencing. So it could be a short prison term. It could be no prison term at all. But certainly in principle, these are very serious charges that carry the possibility of a very lengthy prison term.
I mean, this is a long process. This could still take some legal experts have spoken about this taking up to a year ultimately before it actually, comes to trial or any decision is made. Do you think that Americans, those who support Donald Trump, would be prepared to vote for somebody who has those kind of charges hanging over their head? Will it do him a disservice, as we spoke about earlier?
Well, again, I think we need to distinguish between his passionate base, he again a number of years ago had famously quipped that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it still wouldn't cost him any votes among his base. And it does seem to be the case that he has this kind of Teflon-like appeal to his base, no matter what. Actually, it's almost more like the more problems he has, the more passionately they support him. It's almost they see him as an embodiment of all the grievances that they feel themselves. So I do think that there will be a substantial number of people who would be prepared to vote for him, even as he continues, assuming that he continues to be on trial through the entire electoral process. But again, I don't think that necessarily translates into his general electability. We already saw in 2020 that at least among the popular vote, which of course is not dispositive in the United States, he lost the popular vote by over 7 million votes nationally, which is a significant defeat.
I mean, Lawrence, just a final question for you, and I'll stay with this notion of kind of voting and the US presidential elections in 2024. I spoke to a US commentator earlier today who said, Donald Trump could still win this. His popularity is, as such, and perhaps there are not any opponents that stand out head and shoulders above the others. Do you think that in 2024, Donald Trump, and of course it's a while off, could he be re-elected?
Well, again, I guess the first question is, would he receive the Republican nomination? And, we do see a number of people trying to at least now challenge him for the Republican nomination. And he is by far the front runner there, but, we need to see what happens. In terms of winning in 2024, assuming that he does receive the Republican nomination, is it impossible? No, nothing's impossible. And unfortunately, the United States does have this electoral college system, which I think works to the advantage of someone like a Donald Trump, because it means that that you can still secure the presidency, as he did in 2016, by still losing the national popular vote. I find it almost impossible to imagine that he could win the national popular vote in 2024. But whether, again, given the kind of the distorting effects of this antiquated system that we have for awarding a candidate the presidency, I suppose it's not impossible that he could secure the requisite electoral college votes.
All right. Lawrence R. Douglas, you are a law professor and equally the author of the podcast, The Case Against Donald Trump. Thanks so much for sharing your views with us today. Thank you.
My pleasure.